Hello and welcome back to Wargaming with me, Gary. And those of you who saw the last video, you'll know that this is... So the last video I did was an experiment to see how I got on doing a chat video. I've not done one of those before, apart from the last one I did. And I just thought I'd give it a go and see how it works out. And I thought whilst I'm doing it, I'll do some painting as well. Now, what I have done is I've made some bullet points because I have a terrible habit. Well, it's not a terrible habit, but it's a habit. It is a habit, no ifs or buts about it, of going off tangent. And I don't really want to do that with this because I think it's going to be a relatively long video for me anyway. And I'd like to try and keep on track, if at all possible. So let's get started. And so I'll tell you what I will do. I'm just going to move this down here a little bit so you can get a better picture of what I'm doing. There's also a little bit of a update there, isn't it? Or you can see the figures in the background. Yeah, I think that's okay. So my discussion point today is ancient history. In particular, the first king of Assyria, and how I'm going to use the information that I've been reading to set up battles and campaigns, so scenarios. And I think, like, I like scenarios. I like fantasy scenarios, things which are totally made up. But I also like those ones which have a little bit more thought put into them when you combine a scenario which may have happened, or was possible, and then you put that into a scenario for a battle report. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to try and do today. So the first king of Assyria, or at least the first king mentioned in the Assyrian king list. Yes, they had a king list. Is a chap by the name of Tudea, or Tudea. And he's the first of what is commonly known as so he's the first of 17 kings who lived in tents. Now, this is where it gets interesting already. And ancient history particularly gets interesting. Excuse me. Because it's difficult to determine if things are factual or hearsay or magnified, like blown out of proportion. So in this case, it's difficult. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, in this case, it's difficult to determine if this king did actually live in tents, or if the 17 kings lived in tents, or was it a metaphor for the amount of moving around they had to do due to war, invasion, political turbulence. It's all very unclear and open to subjective opinions, which are constantly changing. And what we take to be fact today in ancient history can be disproved tomorrow, and therefore completely changes where we're coming from. And one thing I will point out is what I've come to notice from ancient history, particularly ancient history in Mesopotamia, which I will include Egypt in as well, so Egyptian history as well, that a lot of the history we use now uses one event as a central point. And this is like there was a full eclipse which was witnessed in Assyria around about the 900 BC, And this is a pivotal point where a lot of the dates and times and accounts are taken from this event. So what they can do is, so if we were to say the Battle of Kadesh, for example, because we know this full eclipse, we can say that the Battle of Kadesh actually happened before the eclipse. So you see, but it's really difficult to get, and we know that the eclipse did happen because it's mentioned not only in Assyrian history but Babylonian history, Egyptian history, biblical history. All those different areas, they all mention this eclipse. So it's a kind of starting point for historical fact. But even that can be challenged, on a permanent basis. So, getting back to this king, the first king of Assyria, Tudea, not only do we know whether they actually lived in tents, but there is the question whether this king existed at all, because it's unconfirmed. So I'll read you a little bit. It's so according to a Syriologist, George Roos, Tudea would have lived in the latter half of the 25th century BC. Well, that's okay. Somewhere between 2450 BC and 2400 BC. Tudea was, according to the king list, succeeded by Adamu, who is another king who lived in tents, so they say. And again, this has been difficult to prove, and it's not been confirmed for sure that this guy actually existed. So again, all the time you're having to look in deeper and deeper. I hope at some point these people will be confirmed. But as it stands at the moment, so archaeological reports from Elba identifies that Tudea's existence was confirmed with the discovery of a tablet where it was stated that he had concluded a treaty for the operation of a karam. A karam is like a commercial district or a trading post, and this was in Albanian territory. So he would have had to get permission from the rulers of that time, of that area, to do so. Now, what we do know, so what it says here, I'll go back a little bit. So he got from the trading post territory with King Ibrahim of Alba, who is now known to actually have been the visor to King Ibrahim, and the visor's name is Issa Damu. So we can see already, you see what's already happened there. Already we've got initially something which we thought was a fact, because it's on that tablet. On the tablet it says that a particular guy, so Tudea, had a treaty with the king of Alba, or the visor for the king of Alba. However, this entire reading is now questionable, as several scholars have more recently argued that the treaty in question was not with King Tudea of Ashur. Ashur was the first. That was the first main town of Assyria, and a lot of people, including the Assyrians, refer to themselves as people of Ashur, not from Assyria. Assyria was a term which came up later. So they're saying that this treaty wasn't with King Tudea at all, but rather with an unnamed king of an uncertain location called Abyssal. Abyssal is quite an interesting place. It was in so Abyssal was around in 2000. Abyssal was being campaigned against or under siege around this time of 2420 BC by an advisor of Alba, Ibrahim. So we've got that bit. So we know that was going on, or as far as we're aware, we know that bit was going on. But now all of a sudden, King Tudela existence has been brought into question. It's fascinating, isn't it? Like every time you read something, you think, oh, I've got this. Something else comes up. I'll just tell you a little bit about Abrasel. Abrasel was a city-state in Mesopotamia in the area of Euphrates, although it is again unidentified where exactly this place was. So again, another question. You read something to get answers, and you seem to get more and more questions. And to be honest, I quite like that. I enjoy this little bit of detective work you have to do when you're trying to find stuff out, and I find it very interesting. Anyway, the earliest Assyrian kings had at first been independent, semi-nomadic pastoral rulers. And again, see, it has been difficult to determine exactly what is meant by semi-nomadic, and were the kings also nomadic? Assyria is thought to have begun as an oligarchy. I always have problems with that, so I'm going to read that again. Assyria is thought to have begun as an oligarchy rather than a monarchy. These kings at some point became fully urbanized and founded the city-state of Ashur. So, and that goes back to what I was saying about Ashur being the first city, really, of Assyria, and it certainly gets a high place in Assyrian culture, possibly because the temple for Ashur, which is one of their gods, one of their main gods, was put in this city. So yeah, more questions. You know, a little bit of fact there, because we do know that Ashur was possibly one of their first towns or cities. However, Assyrian kings did not rule until so it says here Assyrian kings did not rule until the 21st century. Well, that's not strictly true. They did rule, but I think what it actually the source I got this from, I think they're speaking as an independent, strong nation. So so they did rule their own cities, but they weren't strong, and they certainly weren't independent. They relied on a lot of allies around them in order to survive. So prior to this, the Assyrians governed cities like Ashur as subjects of Sumeria, or other strong rulers such as Acadia, Elaine, the Amorites. Yeah, so that's how they first came on to the historical. Sorry, lost my train of thought there a little bit. Yeah, so that's how they first came into notice for us. This isn't easy. I'm finding not as easy as I thought it was last time. Painting and chatting at the same time, but I'm doing a lot of reading here as I go along, because as I said, I'm trying to stay on focus. So yeah, and I think that's an important thing, like what I've said there about, although they were governors and they certainly did rule their own cities as kings at some point, firstly from Tudela, they were dependent on other people around them, because they were a small nation compared to Sumeria and Acadia. That they were small potatoes, and so they had to keep people around them happy, as people do now. I mean, you only have to look at us. We do try to keep America happy when possible. When when the media decide they don't like a particular person, makes it difficult for us. But generally, we try to keep America happy, as do most of the Western world. So you can see how that works. Where was I? So I mentioned this because there was a lot going on around this period. So specifically, 2,450 to 2,400, which is today at 2 years time, and that's who I'm going to concentrate on today. There was an awful lot going on, and I'm going to give you, just bear with me whilst I get that done. Yeah, okay. So let's have a look. So things that were going on during and around the reign of Judea, as well as Assyria slowly being established and becoming a more powerful, slowly but surely, a more powerful unity. I throw that word in, unity. I sometimes lose my track of my track of thought, and so I just throw a word in and I hope it fits. So yeah. So during this time and before it as well, there appears to have been a mad rush to grab land, as much land as possible, and the development of an irrigation system in Mesopotamia used by farmers only seemed to intensify this conflict. Well, that's not a surprise. If you think about Mesopotamia, which actually in Greek it means land between two rivers, so Mesopotamia is between and around the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And if you think about that, if you have, think where it is, the Middle East, so hot, dry, a little bit of sand over there, water is going to be like oil, like it's possibly the most precious commodity. And of course, all the powerful leaders wanted as much of that as possible, especially with the introduction of irrigation systems to do farming. It makes sense, doesn't it? So there they are. They're all charging around trying to take as much land as they possibly can. Two of the key protagonists were the Sumerians and the Akkadians. I've mentioned them several times, but there were a lot of other people involved here who were also being if you're trying to survive, you're treading between, who do I go on, who should I back this time, and who should I work for. So you've got that on. Also, the Sumerians invented a rudimentary chariot by using domestic donkeys. Now, this initiated what could only be classed as an arms war, because the first time these chariots came out, everyone's like, holy cow, these are devastating, not unlike a tank. I mean, that's how they would have been seen, isn't it? Like similar to a tank rolling out on the field, rolling over everything in front of it. Oh, that's good. That's done. So that initiated this arms race for everybody to have their own chariots. So you've got, and you can see the difference between, if you look on, like the chariots, like the difference between the Sumerian chariots and the Egyptian, the ancient Assyrian chariots, the Hittite chariots, they all have their own particular style. I mean, the ancient Egyptians, for example, were much, much lighter and therefore much faster than what the Sumerians would have been using. prior to the Egyptians coming up with their own type of chariot. Whereas the ancient Assyrians progressed eventually to 4-horse chariots, which were like still they were made with much lighter materials, so you could move quite fast, but they were specifically to bash people down, like, just 4 horses and get in amongst the enemy troops and cut them apart. So you can see how that race, that arms race, kind of was initiated. Where are we? So I'm just going back to me, because there I go off tangent again. So I just want to try and get back here. Also, Kish was lost to the Hamazi tribesmen from the Kurdistan mountains. Amorites and Canaanites occupied Syria and Lebanon. Here's one. No, right, I've had difficulty pronouncing this chap's name. Lagal Kinishi Dudu. Dudu, right, Dudu, right. D-U-D-U. Dudu? Dodo? No, not Dodo. But Dudu, yeah, okay. He united the lands of Uruk and Now, isn't that's not a mistake in me speaking, and that's not me just trying to clear my throat. There was actually a place called spelt U-R. So when I say I'm not. Yeah, it's not. It's not a pause. It's not me going. It's a place. So there was a place called and this guy, I'm going to just call him Lagal, because I don't mind pronouncing the rest of it. He united the lands, those lands, which I believe weren't that far from Babylonia, which in the great scheme of things weren't far from the Assyrians, Ashur and Nineveh. So tricky times. So it's not only what it was. Sorry. So that's all the military and difficult things which are going on, but also at the same time you had things like scribing. The Sumerians were using scribing to gather information. The temple of Khafra was built in Giza. The construction of the pyramids was going on at this time. So there's a lot going on, but a lot of conflict as well. So clearly, if Tudir did exist, he clearly would have been a very canny, resourceful chap. Not only surviving during this dangerous period, but also being able to raise to such a high position without being knocked off his perch by outside influences, but also from people inside. We've all seen Game of Thrones. We know what goes on. Look at me. Game of Thrones. I think, you know what, I think a better example for us, for British people, I think if you look at things like War of the Roses, would be a much more sort of like closer knit sort of what was going on. So Games of War, Game of Thrones. Sorry, so Game of Thrones, I believe, is based loosely around War of the Roses, with good reason, because there's lots of intrigue going on and a lot of people getting stabbed in the back. So this guy, he managed to hold on to what he did, or and become the first king, if he was ever the first king, purely because of it would have been his charisma, his force of arms. He would have had to have been an intelligent man to work with all these other people. So this background, right? So moving on. This background offers some very interesting scenarios. Yeah, doesn't it? Doesn't it just to work around which and the scenarios will all have some historical base. So that these could include surviving as a governor. Well, surviving as a governor, I would imagine, was quite tricky, because if you upset the guy in charge, which isn't you, your position is not tenable, is or untenable. So So there's that possibility. So I think that's quite a nice scenario. Always trying, you're always trying to keep somebody happy. Always the person who pays the bills. Obeying the demands of the King of Elba in this case, whilst maintaining good local opinions. See, that's another thing. Like, was he having to quell riots and rebellions because of what he was being told he has to do by the King of Elba, or by Ibrahim, the vizier for the King of Elba? Defending his subjects. Now I find this a really interesting one, and some of the scenarios, it just, as I read it out, it just flashed through my mind. It was like defending the subjects as Elba slowly loses its position of power and the ability to protect its people. So, and that would include the people who are the governors who are working for him. They're suddenly they are now having to work out, how do we keep this going, because he can no longer protect us. And it's possibly, we don't know for sure, but it's possibly how the first ancient Assyrian king came about. Elba lost its power, and he realised he was going to have to do some clever negotiating and fighting for himself. So that's it. See, those scenarios, they're just, when you start thinking about it, you go, yeah, and that could have happened. No, and this might have happened. And it helps, for me, this is why I really like ancient history. It helps that there's nothing, like I almost said, in writing. There are things in writing, but there's nothing guaranteed. There's nothing which is certain. Everything has a little bit of, but we found this research. This could have happened. So I love that idea of, this could have happened. Which are now I'm using my imagination as opposed to relying on a historian to tell me what actually happened. He would. Here's another scenario: unifying and securing Ashur and the surrounding territory from bandits, nomadic tribes, and greedy neighbours. All that sort of, there are so many things that we could build a campaign around. And then, of course, there's the fighting to keep what he's already fought for. So he's not got there by mistake. I think he's got there. He's had to work hard for this. Realised an opportunity or a need and gone, right, I'm going to have to develop forces, I'm going to have to develop commerce, I'm going to have to develop trade, all these things. I'm going to have to work with my community, my infrastructure, my community. I'm going to have to do all these things. It's all good, isn't it? It's all good, right? And I say here, the list could go on and on. But you can see what I'm getting at. History offers. So history generally offers us some fantastic opportunities to develop scenarios. But ancient history provides even more due to the uncertainty of historical facts. And that's kind of where I'm at, and that's why I'm now so fascinated in ancient history. Because it's not you can't just read somebody's account and say that's what happened, and then no, that's not fair. That's a bit unfair. Because even in the Napoleonics, the American Civil Wars, a lot of it's dependent on the person who wrote it. But the difference is now or then, a lot more people were writing it. A lot more people. So you can use lots of different sources to gather the information you're looking for. So if, for example, Napoleon wrote, I was wonderful and I was fantastic and Borodino was a raging success, and he was the only guy we had to go on, then we would have to say it was a success. However, Tsar Alexander would definitely have been saying, well, actually, it was a disaster for Napoleon. He lost so many troops. His ability to work to work militarily outside of Moscow was so reduced because of that. So suddenly now we've got two different versions. We've got Napoleon, it was brilliant. Alexander, actually not so brilliant. So we can use that. But ancient history, we haven't. Ancient history, we have to delve and look into it So yeah, so that's why I find ancient history really interesting. I hope that's been interesting for you. There's some historical fact there, which there's some historical information, not fact, historical information. So that's me done. So I hope, like I say, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to do my next video is going to be an unboxing. I got a pack of figures which I wasn't expecting. I'd forgotten all about. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do Frankie's next tutorial. So I must admit, I've quite enjoyed having a little chat. Look at me clapping myself. So I've enjoyed doing that. I have enjoyed doing that. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time. So all the very best. Take care. Bye.